going to yell really loud.
Okay, so we are looking at some different situations. If you have a line, or in this case a line segment, that does go through the circle at 2 points but extends beyond, that's called a secant. So these two lines right here are both secants, and we refer to this situation as a secant angle. So this angle over here on the outside that we're looking for is a secant angle. Okay? So for a secant angle, it's similar to what we looked at with the last lesson with the segments going through. This angle it's not an average of these two, but it's similar. It's the average of the difference. So in other words, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract the two arcs. So basically you're going to take the difference of the arcs and divide by 2. I'm stumbling over my words today, but that explains what I'm trying to do. So the difference of the arcs, we're going to take 160 minus 50, and then when we get that, we'll divide by 2. So 160 is over here, 50 is over here. That gives us 110. If we divide by 2, that leaves us with 55 degrees.
Wait.
I'm waiting.
Wait.
Espera. Okay, so we looked at tangent lines. I'm not writing anything. We looked at tangent lines in the last lesson. These two lines over here are what we call tangent segments. They only touch the circle at one place. So it touches the circle down here at U. This one touches the circle at S. They're both tangent segments, I guess you would say. So this angle over here is a tangent angle. And so they gave us the big arc as 245. How could we find the smaller arc? Not divide by 2. That's the kind of angle.
It from 360.
Okay, so if I take 360 minus 245, remember the whole circle is 360, we end up with 115. So this arc over here is 115. So if they don't give you that information, remember the full circle is 360. And then the formula for this is the same. We're just going to take the difference of the two arcs, 245 minus 115, and then we'll divide by 2. So that'll end up being 130 divided by 2, which is 65 degrees.
Hold on a second.
Okay? So it's the same formula, but the picture looks really different. So we're going to look at a lot of different looking pictures. We'll give them some names, and then we will show how they actually end up with the same measurements. And these are really interesting if you do encounter one on, say, an SAT. They'll just randomly pick one kind of problem, and it may be a tangent on one, and on the next one it may be something like we looked at last week. They just have like certain categories they have to pick from. This is just from the big geometry category. And so these could show up, they might not. So I'm just trying to give you guys a quick overview.
Is this next one a tangent secant?
Yes, tangent secant. Or actually they call it a secant tangent, but it would be the same thing. So secant tangent angle over here. So this is a tangent line, just touches at T. This is a secant line because it goes through and hits on the other side. So this one, I'll just label these. This is tangent, and this one's the secant. And they actually did give you both arcs. So we can just go ahead and look for the difference. So we have 170 minus 110 over 2, which would just be 60 divided by 2. We get 30 degrees.
Okay, so it's just the same formula.
Same formula. So let's name these. What's this one? Secant, just to practice the terminology that we've learned.
Is naming them on the homework?
No, but it could be a test question. Okay, so they're giving me the big arc is 155. What about the question mark?
We don't know.
So this is, they've actually on this one given us the angle, and they've given us this, and we're going to go backwards. So we're just going to set up an equation. So 43 is the answer. It's equal to, now I have to look, is it going to be 155 minus question mark or question mark minus 155? 155 will be first because it's bigger, and I'm just going to call this x because, you know, generic.
Question mark.
And then divided by 2, and we just have this little equation then to solve. You just put the x in there where that's missing. So how do we solve that equation? Multiply by 2. No, so multiply by 2 on both sides. So 2 times 43 equals 155 minus x over 2. So I'm going to show all the work here. So times 2. Those go away. This ends up being 86 equals 155 minus x.
Subtract 155.
Subtract 155.
Oh,
And we're going to get negative, but we're also going to get negative x. So don't worry, it cancels. So we get negative 69 equals negative x. Get rid of the negative by dividing by -1, or just change the signs. So x is 69 degrees. And you could check it. You could take 155 minus 69 and then divide it by 2. So sometimes they will leave other pieces of information out in the middle. So we just have to recognize what each thing is.
Yeah, I'm just
Sorry, I didn't do it.
straight up.
All right, so let's look at number 5. I'm guessing they're trying to print to the
Tangent.
office. So this is a tangent, so let's label it. That's the old office printer, so I'm guessing they're printing to the wrong room. It'll make a little noise, but it's okay.
So you get
So
coloring.
this one is very interesting. They only give us the angle.
So weird.
That's straight up.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to call the question mark x, and then if I knew what that was, I could find the bigger arc by subtracting it from 360. So we're going to call this 360 minus x. And we're going to set up an equation, and it's going to work. So the 70 degrees was normally the answer in our equation. We're going to use that. And you'll have 360 minus x, and then minus the other x. So the 360 minus x, the first one, this is from that first big angle, and this is from the second angle, and then you divide by 2. So that's just the difference of these. It's got a lot of algebra going on there. So you could rewrite that as 360 minus 2x over 2, and then it's just an equation we can solve. But you have to know, if they don't give you either one of these, that that's what you need to do. The bigger one needs to have the 360, the smaller one needs to be x. Even if you're solving for the bigger one, and in that case, you'd have to do a little bit of extra work. So we multiply both sides by 2. So I get 140 equals 360 minus 2x. So I just did times 2 over here. And then what would be my next step?
Divide by 2.
No.
Subtract 360.
Subtract 360 first. It does look a little strange the way it's written, but we're going to go for this. So it's negative 220 equals negative 2x. Okay, bring it home. What's the last step?
Divide by negative.
Divide by negative 2. So this is 110 equals x. So if they're asking just for this smaller angle, I'd be done. I could say 110 degrees. So you have to set it up this way, but what if they're asking for the bigger angle? And I just found the smaller one, or sorry, the arc. So then if they were asking for this one, I would have to subtract it from 360, and you have to remember to do that step if they ask for the big one. So this one's 110. So just for the sake of thoroughness, if they were asking for this one, I would take 360 minus 110, and this would end up being 250 over here. So they could ask you for either. In a problem, just recognize you have to find the one that they're asking for. Yes?
If they're asking for the other one, though, would you use x as the other one?
You can't, but, well, you could, but then you're going to end up with negatives because you always want to have the 360 and the subtracting after to make everything work out. You always want to subtract the bigger angle minus the smaller to keep the number positive. Does that make sense? So if you subtract it the other way, you might end up with a negative angle, and then you'd have to know how to fix it. You could, but it might look a little weird when you're done. Okay, so let's go on to number 6. So they're giving us the smaller arc, they're giving us the angle, and we're looking for the bigger arc, so I'm going to call that x. So 70, oh, I forgot to name it. What's this one named?
Tangent.
It is a secant tangent. You guys already
I'm
did
good
it.
at this part. That's
Okay,
it.
good.
That's it.
So it's a secant tangent. So 70 equals, and then this big one to be x minus 60 divided by 2. So we'd multiply both sides by 2. So 2 times 70 is 140. Take this times 2. It goes away. Get x minus 60. And that's not so bad because all I have to do is add 60. add 60, and make it 200 degrees for my answer. And don't forget the degree mark because they're in degrees.
Homework.